Imagine waking up in 2026 and realizing your biggest competition at work isn't the intern. It's a $30 a month AI subscription that never sleeps, never takes PTO, and somehow writes better emails than your entire marketing department. Oh, and by the way, 1.1 million white-collar jobs have already vanished. And that was just the warm-up. Welcome to the comment section with Thomas Paul, where today we are talking about GPT 5.2, the coming corporate collapse, and why your safe office job might be about as secure as a crypto exchange in 2021. Let's get into it. So here's the setup. GPT 5.2 is out, and the leap from just a few weeks ago is uncomfortable. We're not talking about it writes nicer essays or it helps you brainstorm. We're talking about a system that is now beating human professionals at knowledge work, over 70% of the time, at more than 11 times the speed, and for less than 1% of the cost. Let me repeat that. Better work, 11 times faster, at under 1% of the cost of a human. And this isn't some toy app. We're almost at 1 billion users on this platform. It is the fastest scaling consumer technology in history. That's not a little niche. That's your CEO has definitely heard about this and is already asking your boss why they're paying you 6 figures for spreadsheets. Here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. In 2025, we saw 1.1 million layoffs, the most since the 2020 pandemic. That's already happening, and this is before 5.2 has really had time to snake its way through corporate workflows. Some people looking at this are saying 2026 will see the biggest collapse of the corporate world in the history of business. And no, that's not robots taking all our jobs someday. That's your company is running the numbers in Excel right now. So why should you, as an investor, as a worker, as someone who likes food and housing, actually care? Because nothing in modern economic history combines 3 things at this scale: a nearly free knowledge worker that's already outperforming humans, a technology platform scaling to almost 1 billion users in record time, and executives under pressure to cut costs after years of higher rates and slower growth. That is a perfect storm. For jobs, for corporate structures, for entire sectors. And here's where things get interesting. This isn't just about who gets fired. It's about who gets insanely wealthy from this and who gets completely blindsided. So let's break down the key takeaways from what GPT 5.2 is actually doing, why people think 2026 is going to break a lot of companies. And then we'll talk about how investors can position themselves before the stampede. First, GPT 5.2 itself. This new generation isn't a baby step. It's a phase change. The capabilities compared to just a few weeks before? Shockingly different. We're at the point where you can hand it entire projects, not just individual tasks. It can manage workflows, research, draft, revise, analyze, code, summarize. It works across text, data, and multiple tools. And crucially, it's becoming a drop-in replacement for big chunks of knowledge work. Not everything, not 100%, but enough to be scary. When studies compare human knowledge workers to this tech, about 71% of the time, the AI's outputs are judged better than the humans. Not slightly better. Better, and delivered more than 11 times faster, at under 1% of the cost. This is not an efficiency tool. This is a business model nuke. Because here's what CFOs care about. Speed. Can we do more with less time? Cost. Can we lower headcount? Quality. Will customers complain? If the answer is yes, it's faster, yes, it's dramatically cheaper, and yes, it's actually better. Guess what happens to that layer of middle management whose main skill is forwarding emails and rescheduling meetings? Now combine this with user scale. This AI ecosystem is approaching 1 billion users at a pace no other consumer product has matched. Not smartphones, not social media, nothing. That kind of distribution is a moat. It means developers build on top of it, companies standardize around it, regulators are behind it, and regular workers are quietly adopting it under the radar. So when executives look at this and then look at their P&L, they're not thinking, should we test this? They're thinking, why haven't we already replaced 30% of this department with a few licenses? And this is where 2026 enters the chat. People close to this tech are saying 2026 won't just be a bad year for corporations. It could be the single biggest collapse of the corporate world in modern history, not necessarily because demand disappears, but because the structure of companies stops making sense. Ask yourself, why do you need 10 project managers when one AI-augmented manager can handle triple the workload? Why do you need a 40-person marketing team to write emails, blogs, and ads when a small core team can design strategy and let AI do 90% of the execution? Why do you have layers of analysts building decks and models when AI can ingest the data and spit out multiple scenarios instantly? You don't. And executives are not dumb. They're slow. Until something threatens their bonuses, then they move very fast. In 2025, we already saw 1.1 million layoffs, the highest since 2020. That's the preview. That's companies cutting fat while rates are high, growth is slowing, and investors are impatient. Now inject a frontier AI model that lets you cut 30 to 50% of some back office and knowledge roles while actually improving throughput and costs less than one intern per year. 2026 is where these cost-cutting experiments stop being pilots and become policy. But wait, it gets even wilder, because this isn't just about job cuts. It's about which companies can even survive the transition. Think about a classic big corporation, bloated middle management, slow decision-making, legacy tech stacks, departments that exist mostly to feed each other PowerPoints. Now think about a lean AI-native competitor, tiny team, automated workflows, AI handling ops, marketing, support, analytics, able to launch, iterate, and pivot 10 times faster. If knowledge work is cooked, as some people are already saying, then the old corporate model is the stove. The gap between AI-native companies and traditional corporations is going to look like the gap between Amazon and Sears, or between Netflix and Blockbuster. Only this time it hits law firms, agencies, consulting, banks, SaaS companies, and thousands of service businesses. Here's the uncomfortable truth for investors. The stock market still prices a lot of companies as if HR, marketing, finance, customer service, and operations are all structurally necessary at their current size. They're not. There are companies right now valued in the billions whose secret sauce is basically, we have smart people doing knowledge work more efficiently than our competitors. And now you're telling me a machine can do that more than 11 times faster for 1% of the cost? That's not a headwind. That's an extinction event. So, what are the key takeaways you need burned into your brain before 2026? First, knowledge work is no longer guaranteed to be premium. The assumption for decades was, blue-collar jobs get automated, white-collar jobs are safe. That's gone. The automation wave is rolling straight into the office. Second, the speed of change is massively underestimated. Most people are projecting this like it's some gentle curve. But the tech itself is improving rapidly, adoption is exploding, and economic pressure is already here. This isn't a 10 to 15-year story. We are talking 18 to 36 months. Third, the platform has real pricing power. The people behind this tech are basically saying, users are getting so much value, they're happy to pay more. That means high-margin revenue growth. This is not a race-to-zero commodity. Yet. For now, it looks like one of the most profitable product categories ever created. And fourth, corporate collapse doesn't mean the economy dies. It means it mutates. We will still have businesses. We will still have profits. We will still have growth. But the winners and losers will look very different. All right, let's shift gears. What does this actually mean for investors? Where does the opportunity sit? And where does the risk quietly lurk, waiting to blow up your portfolio? Let's talk offense first. Number 1, direct AI exposure. If you can get exposure to the core AI platforms and infrastructure providers, that's the cleanest way to ride this wave. Why? Because they capture subscription revenue at scale, benefit from almost insane demand, have network effects, more users, better models, more users. They don't care which specific corporate middle manager gets fired. They monetize the replacement. Number 2, AI-native companies. These are businesses built around the assumption that AI is the default worker, not a side tool. They run lean headcounts, automate key processes from day one, treat human employees as orchestrators and decision-makers, not as manual production units. These companies can undercut traditional players on cost while still maintaining healthy margins. They can scale faster because adding a new customer doesn't necessarily require adding new humans. Number 3, picks and shovels. Any infrastructure that enables the AI boom, cloud, chips, data pipelines, workflow automation, and integration tools that get AI into existing corporate systems. If every company in the world is now under pressure to do more with AI, the businesses that make that plug and play will have leverage and pricing power. Now, the scary part. Where should you be extremely cautious? First, labor-heavy, process-driven service businesses with generic knowledge work. Think old-school consulting firms that bill hours for analysis and PowerPoints, agencies that mostly write copy and run campaigns, BPO outfits that depend on large headcounts doing repetitive office tasks. If an AI can do 70% of their value proposition and do it better, faster, and almost free, a lot of their pricing power evaporates. Second, corporations with bloated SG&A and no tech moat. If a company's competitive advantage basically boils down to we've always been around and we have 8,000 people in operations, that's not a moat. That's a liability. 2026 will not be kind to businesses whose org charts still look like it's 1998. Third, companies that delay the inevitable. This is subtle but important. The real losers may not be the early adopters or the AI natives. It might be the firms that announce AI task forces, do a couple of pilot projects, but are too culturally or politically afraid to radically restructure. They'll lag in productivity, keep costs high, lose margins, and then eventually their investors will force changes at the worst possible time. Here's where it gets even more interesting for you personally. You can think of this in two parallel tracks: what it means for your portfolio, what it means for your actual job or business. On the portfolio side, you want exposure to the AI value chain and companies that can weaponize this tech fast. You should be skeptical of businesses whose main asset is a lot of smart people in chairs. And you should expect some ugly earnings calls in 2026 where CEOs quietly admit that their entire operating model has been blown up. On the career side, here's the brutal math. If the machine does your work better, 11 times faster, and at 1% of your cost, your only play is to stop being the machine. You have to move up the stack, from execution to decision-making, from doing tasks to designing systems, from I write reports to I decide which reports matter and how to act on them. People who treat AI as a coworker and amplifier, they'll survive and probably thrive. People who compete with it directly, task for task, they're done. And early adopters will have an advantage. Because when your boss eventually says, we're restructuring around AI, the people who already know how to use it effectively are the ones who get to define the new workflows and keep their seats. Now, looking ahead, what should investors and workers watch next as we move toward this 2026 cliff? First, corporate language. Watch how often words like AI transformation, productivity gains, and headcount rationalization show up in earnings calls and press releases. That's CEO speak for. We're about to replace people with software, but we're saying it nicely so we don't tank morale and get yelled at on social media. Second, hiring trends. Pay attention to hiring freezes in white-collar roles, job posts that explicitly require AI skills, teams where the ratio shifts from doers to AI-augmented operators. We're heading for a world where a small number of humans are leveraging a massive amount of machine capability. Third, tech pricing and margins. If AI providers start raising prices and customers still happily pay, that's your signal that the value created is far greater than the cost. Fourth, government and regulation. At some point, the political system will notice the scale of white-collar displacement, especially post-2025, with layoffs already spiking. You might see new rules around AI transparency, pressure on big companies to retrain instead of just fire, or even tax and labor policy trying to slow down full automation. Will that stop the shift? Probably not. It might change the pace or shape of it. But once the genie is out, you're not stuffing it back into the corporate org chart. Here's the big picture. GPT 5.2 isn't just another app update. It's the moment the market wakes up to the fact that knowledge work can be industrialized. And in economic terms, that means massive productivity potential, huge short-term labor dislocation, and a brutal sorting of companies into those that adapt and those that get quietly delisted. 2026 is shaping up to be an inflection point. Not the end of work, not the end of corporations, but the end of a certain kind of corporation. Slow, overstaffed, structurally inefficient, and protected only by tradition. For investors, this is both terrifying and incredible. For workers, it's a forced evolution. For the economy, it's a reallocation of who creates value and who gets paid for it. The question isn't, will AI cause a corporate collapse? That train has left the station. The question is, are you positioned on the right side of it? Are you invested in the creators of the tools or the companies that will be replaced by those tools? Are you training yourself to use this stuff, or are you pretending your job is immune because it has a fancy title? So, let's bring this home. GPT 5.2 is already better than human professionals at a lot of knowledge tasks. It's doing them over 11 times faster and at less than 1% of the cost. We've already seen 1.1 million layoffs in 2025, the worst since 2020. And some very smart people are saying 2026 might be the biggest corporate shakeout in business history. Investors who understand that this isn't a gadget story, but a restructuring of the entire white-collar economy, are going to have a massive edge. And everyone else? They'll still be arguing about whether AI can really replace humans while their company quietly automates half their department. If you've watched this far, I want to hear from you. Do you think 2026 is going to be a corporate extinction event, or is this all overhyped doom posting? Are you personally using AI in your job or business, and if so, how? Drop your hot takes in the comments. I actually read them. If you want more deep dives at the intersection of AI, finance, and the future of work, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this with the coworker who keeps saying, "My job is too complex for AI." This is The Comment Section with Thomas Paul. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, assuming I haven't been replaced by GPT 6.0 running on a toaster.